through the heavens. Everything that's happening at a given time reflects the archetypal pattern of that time. And the old astrologers and alchemists used to have it almost engraved on their hearts, the saying, as above, so below. Meaning that above wasn't the cause of below, or vice versa, but that the same similar pattern is occurring at the same time because it's the universal pattern for that moment, and everything that's happening somehow reflects it. So we're talking a type of, I don't want to say mysticism because that's one of those words that is just off the charts. People don't know what it means anymore. But it is what the famous mystics of all religious experiences have talked about, is that somehow we're not in charge. There's a flow that what's happening in a moment resonates throughout the world. Perhaps you've seen or read about the people who pray over water, Japanese scientist who's made a famous study of this, and that if someone is praying over, say, a pot of water or a plant in a plant holder, that something is changing in the water or that plant at that moment. It's not that I'm taking anything and adding it to the water or to the plant. It's not plant food. It's a spiritual plant food, a spiritual water enricher. Then they test the water, they watch the plant, they measure it. Something happens. So there's a whole world that we aren't in touch with all the time. But astrology gives us a map of that. And I would like to give you, while I'm talking and before I forget, a couple more book titles, because these are where you can find out what you really need to find out if you're interested in this. Wonderful author is Alice O. Howell, who died in December of 2014. A grand lady, big woman, flowing white hair, who would wear these beautiful muumuus, and she was an astrologer who wrote several books. Her first one, Jungian Symbolism in Astrology, published by Quest Books out of Wheaton, Illinois. And I think more than anyone, she synthesizes our approach and has been our teacher. And I'm very glad to have had the chance to have studied with her, not in person, but through lectures that we've attended when she was working in California. You also should know, if you're interested in this kind of astrology, that the Grand Master, and this is a small book, so I'll read it to you. The Grand Master is the famous Dane, D-A-N-E, Rudyard, make sure I spell it right, R-U-D-H-Y-A-R, a Frenchman who emigrated to America and died in the late 70s. He is a Renaissance man, a composer, an artist, a philosopher, and wrote the best books on psychological astrology after he had studied every psychologist from Plato and Aristotle and their peers and their antecedents up to through Jung, Freud, and all the rest. And this little book really capsulizes what I'm talking about. The title is From Humanistic to Transpersonal Astrology. So at first he was writing about humanistic psychology, Carl Rogers, Abraham Maslow, familiar names to us. And he was saying that makes a lot of sense astrologically. And then he found the transpersonal psychologists. And there are many of those. Trans meaning beyond, and personal meaning me and you. So what is beyond us? And there, he translated those understandings of his from the psychologists into his study of astrology. I know it sounds dense. In a way it is, and on the other hand, it's extremely simple and beautiful and elegant once you dig a little bit. Or work with someone who can help figure out what's going on with you. A last book, there is a season based on Ecclesiastes, a time for this, a time for that, a time to die, a time to live, a time to rejoice, a time to mourn. And it's by Sister Joan Chittister, a very well-known Benedictine sister, with wonderful illustrations by Los Angeles artist John A. Swanson. I think perhaps you can see this. Right at the top is a big zodiac that John has painted that shows all the signs in their order. And both the author, Joan, and the artist, John, have written the book as though the seasons of our life being reflected in the zodiac: Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, the 12 signs, as though these are phases in our lives that correspond to the verses from Ecclesiastes. Elegant book, beautifully illustrated, a meditative book to reflect on. And Joan Chittister, who is widely known as a cutting-edge member of Christian circles, says it's time we re-investigated the signs of the zodiac. And when I read that, I thought, yes, you are so right. Okay, I'm going to read you another question. And I want to show you a couple of works of art. Aren't there warnings, this is the question, aren't there warnings about astrology in the Bible and probably in holy books of other traditions as well as Jewish and Christian? And the answer is yes. And the warnings are not to give away your power to somebody who's got a chart and a lot of fancy little curlicue signs on it and saying, here's what you're supposed to do. No, no, no. In psychological astrology, or what I would call spiritual astrology, the person learns how to read his or her birth chart. And I'll hold up a birth chart, because here's mine. And people who come to see us, we create something like this for them. And then we teach people how to explore what this says. It's a picture of our life. It's a map of the soul, or some people call it a spiritual MRI, which is a sort of an interesting title, or a soul print. And by seeing what's happening in your birth chart or mine, we can get an idea of why we're here. Why was I born? Remember the old Peggy Lee song, or you probably don't, but why was I born? Why am I living? That's important information to know, and there's a way to address it with astrology. Does it take away from our devotion to a higher power, if that's what we have? Absolutely not. It's an adjunct to that. So, just a minute, I'll get back here. I want to show you a little bit about how the religions of the world, since we've got onto a religious track here, have used astrology and astrological symbols throughout history. And again, I'm talking just about Western civilization, because if we start going to China, Japan, India, and the Mayan culture, there's no end in our 15 minutes or so. But let's take a look at this beautiful, beautiful work of art. This is a fresco on the wall of a 13th century cathedral in the Republic of Georgia. And as you can see, it has a picture of Jesus in the middle. And he's surrounded by some angels, but also in the outer room, the signs of the zodiac. So a lion for Leo, a pair of twins for Gemini, a centaur who's shooting an arrow into the heavens for Sagittarius, all those familiar signs. So this has been preserved on the wall of the cathedral in Georgia, the Republic of Georgia. Now we're talking north of Armenia and east of Turkey, not Georgia, USA. It's been there since all these years, and people worshiping in that space have come in and said to themselves, or if not explicitly, they've certainly said implicitly, well, looks like God and the zodiac have something to do with each other. But I just love the colors and imagine it lasting all these centuries. And then I want to show you another picture. This one is smaller. This is a 6th century mosaic from the floor of a synagogue, so it's Jewish art, in northern Galilee that was only uncovered in the 1920s by members of a kibbutz who lived there and were digging around and said, oh, what's this? What have we found? And they uncovered this zodiac again, and the signs have their Greek symbols on them, which are the symbols that we're familiar with, like the Roman number 2 stands for the twins of Gemini. But it also has Hebrew lettering for the names of the signs incorporated in with the pictures, all made up of tiny mosaic bits. Now, 6th century. And we can extrapolate, well, what was that doing there? What did it say to the worshippers, the Jewish people who came in and saw it there and walked around it, maybe even stood on top of it? What is it saying? It's saying that our faith, a symbol for the divine is in the middle, our faith has something to do with astrology, or maybe vice versa would be better. Astrology has something to do with our faith. It's not verboten, it's not prohibited. It makes sense in terms of our faith dimension. So I like these two pictures, and there are many, many more. If you have been to cathedrals in Europe, you probably have looked up and seen the stained glass windows, maybe a couple of fish floating side by side, and you're saying, well, what's that doing there? That's the sign of Pisces. Or what else might you have seen in Chartres or any, especially in the French cathedrals? Well, you might have seen a ram, and your take on it would be, well, it's the male sheep. Actually, it's put there because it's a sign of Aries, the first sign of the zodiac. And if we looked around the stained glass window, we would find the other 11 signs somewhere in that window. So again, people walking into a setting like that are being told this is not a necessary part of our faith experience, but one that is an adjunct to it, that can help amplify it and help us understand it. I think my time is getting short here, so what I would like to do is invite you to take a look at our center's online course in spiritual astrology. It's a free course, and we designed it so that our folks who are coming into our office and bringing astrological tidbits would have a starting point for thinking about astrology in a spiritual / psychological way. And if they want to pursue it, there's a lot of information in there, and I would like to invite you to take a look at it. So the center website is www. all one word now, centerforsacredpsychology.org, and you'll see pictures of our staff, and you'll see pictures of charts of our staff, and you'll see pictures of our cat who helps us in the office as a pet therapist by coming and going and purring. And I hope you'll enjoy it. Bye now.